Robert here, and I got with me a very special guest, a guy I have been a big fan of. I did a big, huge creator spotlight on him a while back. I like this. He's done so many comics, so much. I'd like to thank and introduce you all to Mr. Jimmy Palmiotti.
How you doing, buddy?
Not too bad.
Good.
Thank you so much for doing this. It is.
My
I
my pleasure. It's
big
always fun.
fan. I've been a big fan since Harley and even way back. Just so much of your work I have loved, and
I'm old. I'm old. It's when you're old, you have you get a big body of work. So I have 30 years of work,
oh yeah, and
comic work. Yeah.
well, what got you into comics? Let's start with the most obvious, basic question of all.
I think it's like everybody else. When I was younger, so I had two older brothers and one younger brother, and my two older brothers would have comic books around, and then I had an uncle that owned a barbershop, and he had a
Hmm.
stack of comics in the barbershop and Playboys too. I like those too, but he'd always swat them out of my hands. Um, but I grew up reading, Superman and Archie and, Fantastic Four, and these comics were like always around. Again, it's not like now where we have computers, where we have a million channels, where we have so many distractions. When I was younger, it was like comic books, reading, music, and some TV. There wasn't a lot of
Hmm.
channels back then, and most of the programming for kids were on a Saturday.
Right.
Um,
Good old
but
Saturday mornings.
yeah, pretty much. And now the kids 24/7, so I don't know.
Hmm.
But so when I was younger, I was reading a lot of comics, and I started collecting them, and I found like a couple of friends that I went to school with. I think it was sixth grade. I had like two or three friends that also bought comics. So they would come over. I lived in Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and
Hmm.
we would sit on my stoop, and they would bring comics. I would have comics, and we'd read them. We'd read each other's books,
Hmm.
and I started collecting them. And there weren't comic stores back. There was one bookstore that had comics in it, but for the most part, they were in comic shops. So I got a lot of my comics from the newsstand, from card stores. They would have a comic book rack, and I also used to buy them in bulk from the Salvation Army. They used to sell me a whole box of
Oh.
comics for like $4, and it would have everything and anything in it.
Hmm.
But that's probably why also I like all different kinds of genres, because I never read just one genre, especially when I got the Salvation Army box. It would
Hmm.
have like old DC horrors, it would
Oh
have
yeah.
westerns, it would have everything in it. And I enjoyed it all. It was one of the few things I can do by myself. And
Hmm.
I also started copying the artwork in the books. So that's how I got into drawing, because I wanted to be able to draw like them. And
Hmm.
so I would sit there and I would just take my piece of paper and try to imitate Jack Kirby, which is
Hmm.
impossible. And,
Right.
Frank
Very few
Frazetta.
can do that. Very few can even come
No,
close.
it's really,
Go close. I'm saying, come close. Not
yeah. But that's how
perfect.
I got into that whole world of comics. And I didn't go to my first comic convention until I was 15.
Ah.
That was in New York, and it was a guy named Phil Sewling through these shows in the
Mhm.
basements of hotels.
All right.
And yeah, and I've been collecting ever since. I mean, there was a time when I was like 18 to like 24, 25, where I didn't buy comics for a while.
Mm.
I think it was girls and work and college and all that stuff got in
Of
the way.
course, the usual.
Yeah, but then I was, then when I was working in advertising, and when I left that job, and I at 30, when I was 30 years old,
Hmm.
and decided to get into comics full time, and
Hmm.
that's how I got into it.
Yep. And you've done writing, you've done artwork, inking especially.
Yeah.
Which did you do first, inking or writing?
Definitely inking. I was definitely I was drawing at first, and then I started, and I did inking work. I did a lot of inking work. I mean, I've
Hmm.
inked over 1,000 comics.
Oh
Pretty much.
yeah, I've seen so many. Your titles on so many inking
There
projects.
was a time, yeah, I was doing two or three a month, but I didn't get into writing till Joe Casado and I met, and we formed Event Comics, and we started
Ah.
writing Ash together. And then
Hmm.
I didn't write for a while, and then I came back with doing books like Gatecrasher and Beautiful Killer, and
Hmm.
for Black Bull Entertainment. I did a thing called New West and The Resistance and 21 Down. And I slowly started getting writing work, and then eventually that became my full time work, and I dropped the inking part
Mm-hmm.
because it didn't pay very well,
Right.
and I was one of those guys where they had me fix other people's art, and eventually
Mm-hmm.
that becomes exhausting after a while.
Oh, I bet.
I kind of stuck to the writing.
Yep. And one thing I've noticed when it comes to your writing is that, I mean, you've done so many. You've done in continuity, you've done out of continuity, you've done side books, you've done so many stuff. How do you go into each project when you, especially, because you capture the characters very well each time? Do you do any research? You just know the characters that well, or what?
I research the ones I don't know, but I make a list of what it is people like about the characters. So in the case of, like, say, Harley Quinn, or even, yeah, look, we can do Harley since that's recent.
Right.
Like, I looked at, the Bruce Timm. Well, I knew I was familiar with the Bruce Timm Paul Dini stuff, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also worked on the Injustice game, and she was in
Oh,
there, and it was a different character.
right, right.
And when they handed the gig to Amanda and I looked at the character and said, "What is it people like about this character?" And I said, "Visually, she's cool."
Mm-hmm.
But when Amanda took it over, she didn't like the neck frills, and she didn't like a lot
Right.
of. She wanted to make it her own, which I get. But why did people like this character? What do they relate to? And then I started reading all the books, and I pulled out the ones that I really liked, and then I had analyzed, like, why do I like these books?
Mm-hmm.
And when I find those couple of things that I keep making notes that have in common, I realize, okay, that's the core of the character. That's why this audience, like, so you have to give the audience what they want. At the same time, I have to be entertained while I'm writing it. Otherwise, my boredom is going to show.
Right.
It's also why I don't take on a lot of jobs. I get offered a lot more jobs than I
Ah.
actually do. They offer me characters at times that I have no interest in, and I know other
Mm-hmm.
people would kill for, so I'd rather other people do it.
Right.
An example would be Doctor Strange.
Oh.
I'm not a good guy to write Doctor Strange. I just
Oh
can't
yeah,
relate.
that sounds like a character you would have to be in the right zone for.
Yeah, plus I don't relate to the character very much.
Right.
So I kind of, when Marvel asked me to write Doctor Strange, I told them, I said, you're better off giving this to somebody else. And the editor said to me, "You're the only guy we know that ever turned down Doctor Strange." And I'm like, okay, but I also know that's not for me. And
Right.
in the case with, like, Jonah Hex, I knew exactly, like, okay, this is the
Mm-hmm.
character
Oh yeah, that
I
book.
I want to write, and even Uncle Sam and the Freedom Fighters. I said,
Mm-hmm.
I have some opinions on this, and then, eventually you work all that stuff into creating your own characters too. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I definitely stick to the stuff I have some passion for. I don't like the idea of wasting a reader's time.
Right. It was fun. You mentioned the Uncle Sam stuff. You guys had, and you and Justin had started doing a bunch of stuff at with the New 52, and it
Yeah.
kind of ended abruptly. What else did you have in mind for that?
So we had no support from the company on that stuff.
Oh,
So if you notice, they never promoted it. They never did anything.
right.
I mean, we had guys like Jerry Ordway working with us,
Oh
and
yeah.
nobody, we did the individual issues. I think a lot of it had to do with them keeping the names and the copyrights.
Of course.
But we definitely didn't care about that. We just said, okay, we're going to do some fun stuff with some unpopular characters. Like, they're
Mm-hmm.
unpopular because they've never sold enough to get
Right.
series, right? And that, for Justin and I at the time, we looked at everything like that as a good challenge. Like, what?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you do Batman, it's going to sell. I don't care how
Right. Of
shitty
course.
you write Batman, people buy it.
So
Okay.
true. So true.
And,
Like
and,
Spider
and
Man too.
yeah, and it's why the company DC now is, half of their books are Batman related, at least half,
No kidding.
because they know people are just going to buy them no matter what. And
Mm-hmm.
so when you do take on something that's a little bit of a challenge, like a Jonah Hex, like a Freedom Fighters, a lot of stuff, you not only get to, it's a challenge for me, but also at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, I get to do stuff where nobody's really watching me too much.
Right. And
And
I liked all three of
that
those.
was the same with Harley. With Harley, they told me and Amanda that it probably won't last a year. It'll probably get discontinued. But
Oh boy.
right, but to go and have fun and do whatever we wanted, and that's what we did. So sometimes it works out.
Right. And what? Yep. And one other book of yours that I've always loved was the uh, Black Cat Wolverine Claws series. I adored both of those. I know that was more for Lyncher. That's the guy. The artist's
Yeah, Joe
last name.
Lynn's.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe
Yeah.
Lynn's the. Well, so they they offered us, to do a Wolverine type book, and I thought all the books currently coming out from Wolverine were all tough and bloody and dark.
Hmm.
So we pitched something. I pitched with Black Cat. I said, look, it'll be fun and it'll be weird. But the key word is fun. If you guys were
Yep.
interested,
Oh yeah.
and then I brought in Joe Linsner because I love Joe's work, and I just thought it would be a good matchup. And again, the diehard Wolverine people were like, "Oh, it's too goofy," but the
I
mainstream
didn't mind.
the mainstream audience loved it. They understood where we were coming from. Like, it was a lot of awkward, crazy stuff, but that was very consistent with the characters. But at the end of the day, the artwork's beautiful on those books. I'm very
Hmm.
proud of both of those books, and then I got to put Killraven in the second one, so I was
Yep.
super happy with
I,
that.
I love that. Like I said, I love that. Especially, I loved how the very first mini, he and Felicia are just stuck in that position. And then by the second one, it's more like, oh boy, they're going to get frisky eventually by the end. And it was just like, I just loved how it went from 1 to 2. It felt natural. It's not like, whoa, wait a second here.
Well, it also came down to something people wanted to see, right? They wanted
Hmm.
to see both of these characters kind of vulnerable, both of them living in their own space. Not, again, I'm not a big fan of team books with like 10 characters. So
Right.
the idea of taking 2 characters or 3 characters and having some fun with it was very appealing. Look, we definitely played to Joe Linsner's strengths because he draws these
Hmm.
beautiful, sexy women. So there was a
Yep.
lot of slap and tickle and play fullness in the series, and it did so well. They asked us to do another one, so we were happy.
Yep.
We're waiting for them to ask us to do a third because we would do
Oh,
that
I
in a
would have
heartbeat.
loved that. I
Yeah,
would love that. But yeah, but what's Harley? I mean, obviously that's been like one of your biggest titles. Although I would still say Jonah Hex is one of my more beloved of your that you've done. But with
thank you.
Harley though, did you expect it to blow up like that?
No, actually, I had. It's funny when they ended the Ohio demand and I to do it, and the first thing I said to him is, I can't write a character that's an abusive relationship. Would it be
Oh right.
okay? Would it be okay if I separate them? And he said, yeah, do whatever you want. And then I said, okay, would it be okay if I get her out of Gotham because she's just going to be another Batman character if I keep her in Gotham? And
Very
he's
true.
like, go ahead, and we
Hmm.
took her out of Gotham. So there was a lot of decisions we made that we had no idea it would have such a big impact. I mean, just taking her away from the Joker kind of started the whole movie Harley.
Hmm.
That was
Very
like
true.
that's and so we made these little, and again, Amanda and Chad changing Harley's costume every issue.
Hmm. Yep.
All of a sudden opened up a world of cosplayers that were loving the book, and again, a character in the DCU that didn't have to stick with one costume, which was something not really typical for any
Very
of the
true.
characters. So it was just us being creative, and again, I think when you hire certain creators and you trust them enough to mess with stuff, you get some really good stuff. When you're gonna over chain them down, you get
Very
business
true.
as usual forever. And
Yeah.
and not all change is good, but I think some change is necessary for certain characters.
Right. And as I say, when you have the moments like, oh, she put the hit out on herself, just insanity like that, that sounds so much like that eventually influenced the cartoon, for example, because, oh, that's just that right out of nowhere. You're like, oh, that is so her, but you didn't think about it.
Yeah, I mean the cartoon's fun. I mean, they use Cyborgman in the cartoon, which I'm happy about. The cartoon does what the cartoon has to do,
Right,
which is they
right.
put her right back in Gotham again.
Oh, that is true. That is true.
It's because they want to just mainstream it as best they
Oh,
can.
yeah.
In comics, we don't worry as much about that because we don't worry about the film and TV stuff because they take from us. We don't take from them.
Right.
So, it's up to us to set the standards and to do new things. The films and the TV show, they just
Oh, yeah.
build on the stuff we did.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Yeah.
so we
And
don't
that,
pay attention. I mean, the only thing we had to pay attention to is in the movie. At one point, Amanda had to make the hair blonde on Harley,
mm-hmm.
because she likes the black and red because the Margot was going to do it blonde in the first movie, and we're like, yeah, that doesn't matter. She would change
Right.
her hair color in a heartbeat anyway, so it doesn't
Oh
matter.
yeah, and I did like that how just so casual about that. But you did so many miniseries, so many other one shots and everything. Were that just like ideas you guys had? Did they just ask you guys to do that, or what
We
came
we
about?
have around we have around 300 more ideas that we haven't done with Harley. We're not ready to do them all. I think we're talking to them about doing a short story somewhere down the line. But
Mm-hmm.
we Amanda and I had tons of stories with her that we even did. I think we did like 117
Oh
issues
yeah,
altogether. But like Dan DiDio came up with, hey, how about a team up book? And we came up with like, well, how about the Little
Little Black
Black Book?
Book.
And
Yep.
and then we had ideas for specials. I wanted to do one where she went to San Diego. Dan came up with the scratch and sniff one,
Oh, that was fun. The
yeah,
rub and sniff now.
yeah. So so DC at one point, and probably why we had to stop at one point, had us doing 2 month bi-monthly book. So it was
Right.
two a month, and and the black book and specials.
Oof.
And Amanda and I,
Burnout. Yeah.
man, we just burned out. We just like, okay, enough is enough. And we just couldn't keep up the pace that they wanted. And it was when the book was one of the top 5 books. It's not that anymore, right? But
Right.
when we were doing it, it was like one of the top. It was outselling JLA at one
Mm-hmm.
point, and so they wanted more, which is what most companies do. And we started to see where they shoved Harley in every book,
Right.
and we kept making the argument that can you not water her down so much? Like let us
Mm-hmm.
control what we'll keep putting out books, but you can't put her in everything.
Right.
And but that's what they did, and
Oh yeah.
we got burned out in the process.
Oh, and I don't blame you. I do not blame you. But hey, you guys had an incredible run. I mean, I own everything, even when they that book that was in the pull box or pull, that you did the genie one. When that got out, I'm like,
Oh yeah,
I
yeah,
gotta get
yeah.
that one because I heard so much about them. Like, I
That's one
gotta
of
get.
our favorite. That's one of our favorite books. I mean, we have 3. It's not all the stories. There's a couple missing, but we have 3 complete omnibuses full of Harley stories, and
Mm-hmm.
that's a lot. I've never had. I think the only one that'd be compatible is if they ever put Jonah Hex in an omnibus. I think that
Oh,
would.
I would love that. And
Yeah, it'll never happen. I'll have to kick the bucket first, I think, and then
oh no,
it'll come out like
no.
3 weeks later. You know.
Oh boy, but yeah, though, but again, I mean, I guess I'll just say one of my other favorite characters that you and Amanda and Justin created was Terra 3 Atlee. I adore the character. That was one of like you came up with this huge lore for her and everything. Found a way to fit Terra 2 in and explain her away,
Yeah,
and
we didn't
then
really want to. We wanted to just make it Atlee.
hmm
But DC wanted the Terra name again not to be used. But as we went on, we kept calling her Atlee after that.
hmm
Um, yeah, her and like Power Girl are 2 characters that will always have guest starring in any book, any DC book we do because we think they're great characters. I mean, we love Power Girl and we love Atlee,
hmm
and Amanda feels like they're her babies. So
oh yeah, I mean,
so
especially
anytime
with
we get, yeah, anytime
like
we can use them, we do.
yep. I mean, I just love one of my favorite was the montages with Atlee. Like they're putting on clothes. That one bit where she's completely topless and Power Girl's like, "Oh Jesus, kid!" Just stuff like that. But also, I gotta say, with Amanda, I just want to tell you, and you could tell her this. I love her facial expressions. Like right up
Oh,
there with Kevin McGuire and all that. She nails it. But especially in the Power Girl book, it was just
well,
so many emotions I
we
loved.
with Power Girl for the audience to get to know her, we kind of did things like give her a job, have a secret identity, that kind of stuff. But the other thing was we needed to introduce a character where Power Girl felt like she was the one showing that character around, even though Power Girl was the alien.
hmm
And when we brought Atlee in, Power Girl felt like, well, this is my world. Now I'm showing you how it is. And we did that on purpose because it also flushed out the personalities of both the girls. It's like a little storytelling technique, but the fun part of their friendship was all the silent stuff, the stuff between glances,
Yep.
them going to
Especially.
the movie theater, all kind of silly stuff, them eating dinner,
Mhm.
and that's what Amanda's strength is, really humanizing superhero characters. That
Yep.
it's the one thing I think editors haven't figured out yet is how if Amanda's doing a character, you're going to relate to it right away. She is one of the few people that does draw the characters looking at you
Mm-hmm.
while they're talking. It's a really interesting thing if you notice in comics.
Oh yeah, I think I have
Uh,
noticed that on occasion. Yeah.
yeah, the communication. That's all. Her storytelling skills come from a lot of Chuck Jones cartoons. So
Oh, I kind of see that,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I just, like I said, now was, and then you eventually you brought her back. You had her in Harley. You had her in Starfire.
yeah,
Would you say that is basically in your mind the same athlete from the Power Girl and all that other
yeah.
stuff, but a
It's
bit
the
more
same one.
mature?
So Dan DiDio used to call it the Jimmy and Amanda universe. That he goes, no matter what books I give you, these characters are eventually going to come into it. Starfire, we brought Atlee and Power Girl in,
Mm-hmm.
and he's just like it's your universe, man. He goes, it's like you these titles are your world, and he goes, and the
Mm-hmm.
people that buy it are in your world. And I said, that's right.
Oh, yep.
I said, as a matter of fact, you just give us a title where it's just our world of characters and let all the other continuity go play with itself.
Yep, and I did notice whenever you guys end something, Amanda always does this big montage type of cover. The character standing there.
Yeah.
You did it with like even with Tara. Even you did that. It was like from there onward. I just like, oh, that's I'm always expecting that now, and I just
Well, that's Amanda's stamp for her last issue of something. Is
mm-hmm,
she'll do the main character standing there with a montage behind him of everything that happened in the book.
mm-hmm,
That's her. That's a thing she came up with, and we have all. I think I have four of them. We had one for
mm-hmm.
Starfire, one for Harley, Power Girl, maybe Atlee is the other one. Yeah, so we have.
Harley and the Birds of Prey even.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I
Yep.
mean,
Oh yeah, that was a great book. That was a great mini. I love that.
thank you, thank you. Yeah,
Yep.
that was us having a blast and having a it's Amanda getting to draw the whole book, so
Mm-hmm.
it's over 100 and something pages of her art, which is she doesn't get to do that much.
Mm-hmm.
Although in the future she's doing a lot more of that now. So
Oh, nice. Now, you've also created some of your own characters, like Painkiller Jane, for example. You have
yeah,
done so much. That character's crossed over with a bunch of other properties.
yeah.
And explain how did that character come about?
So Joe Quesada and I around 1994
Mm-hmm.
were going to self-publish comics with a company called Event Comics, which was our company, and we created a fireman superhero called Ash.
Mm-hmm.
And we wanted to do a female character, and we came up with Painkiller Jane, and we grounded them both in the same universe, and Jane had healing powers, but it was less about her powers, more about her personality.
Right.
She was this bisexual cop that kind of gets really screwed up and almost dies and doesn't go back to the police force, but starts working for her best friend who's a detective, sort of like her trigger, sort of like her lethal weapon. When she can't get stuff done by the law, she sends Jane to do it, and Jane does all the dirty work. And
Mm-hmm.
so Jane's like this really like hardcore crime noir sort of superhero character that I've been working on forever. And as a matter of fact, I have right now I have I think there's a week left on the we have a Painkiller Jane Kickstarter that's live
Mm-hmm.
right now. And what I do is I do these like one shot. This one's like 44 pages plus. I do these one shot books. They're totally adult books. There's nudity and violence and everything in
Mm-hmm.
it. And I put these out every like once a year, and they do pretty well. We're doing really well with this one. Actually, if anybody backs at Kickstarter now, they actually get all the stretch goals. So even if you buy a digital one, you're going to get all these books and all this stuff. So the Kickstarter, so I do it through Kickstarter. I don't feel it's the right book to do through a company, and the companies all want monthly books. Everybody wants
Right.
monthly. And with Jane, I'd rather just take my time. And I worked with this girl, Romina Morinelli, who's an Italian artist that's amazing. And then I went out and got covers from everyone from J.G. Jones to Bill Sienkiewicz. Amanda did a couple of covers. And I even got a cosplay professional. Her name's Jennifer Van Damsel to do a cover that looks amazing. So if anybody wants to check that out, that's on Kickstarter right now, Painkiller Jane. But that's how I do Jane. So every year I do one or two books for Jane, and we put her out. And it's one of my favorite characters, but it's not something right now that I can work on monthly. So I'd rather
Right.
just do adventures oversized adventures that I can actually control rather than making a
Right.
publisher happy. You know.
Oh, yeah, that makes complete sense. And of course, you're doing Red Sonja, and how's that been for you?
Yeah, it's great. So the Red Sonja's been one of the bucket list characters for Amanda and I, and I did get to work with Liam Sharp on a one shot of Sonja years ago,
Hmm.
but Dynamite came to us and asked us if we'd be interested in doing a series. And Amanda couldn't draw it, but she's doing the covers. But we had our buddy that did All Star Western, Moritat. He was available, so we approached Dynamite and said, "Look, we can do 10 issues with Moritat doing the art," and they were like, "Yes." uh, and we again, this is another thing where Amanda and I went back to the older books by Roy Thomas and Frank Thorne and all the stories and looked at everything we really liked about the character and worked it into one giant story. So this story has it has you know it has mermaids, it has pirates, it has monsters, it has volcanoes, it's got kings and queens and betrayal, and it's got dinosaurs, it's got everything you can think of. It's got the steam baths with the two girls in it. It's got a little bit of everything, but it's one giant Red Sonja adventure
Hmm.
about it's pretty much where a princess hires her to get her to a kingdom safely until she's married, and then Sonja's done with the gig. Unfortunately, everything along the way
Oh,
gets in
yeah.
the way. We have people, an old love interest of Sonja wants to kill her and puts a bounty on her. Something happens in the kingdom. There are people that don't want the marriage to happen, and then there's a volcano that's very active.
Oh boy, it's like what else can go wrong?
Right, but it's a lot of fun, and it's one of those things where we put Sonja through everything,
Hmm.
and then she comes out in the end. I think issue 4, or let me see, issue 5 is coming out this week.
Hmm.
That's this
Oh,
one.
nice,
That's this one
nice.
right here, Amanda doing the cover.
Hmm.
Um, and this one is where, yeah, everything starts to go crazy. It's a lot of fun, and it's one of the best sellers for Dynamite, so I'm really happy about that. We're having
Yep.
audience, and you
Yeah,
know, good.
I know. Yep. So, one other thing to ask about. You said you brought up Injustice, and I just double checked. So, yeah, you were a story consultant on the first game. How
Yeah,
was that? Working on that.
it was interesting because we did more than consult. There was a lot of our work in that, but that's our
Hmm.
title. That was our title.
Hmm.
It was great. I mean, to set up this alternate world and do all this stuff was a lot of fun. We got to work some really talented writers. There's a lot of writers on this because it was a video game, so it's a monster project. But yeah, it was one of the best-selling games they've ever made. DC ever did,
Hmm.
and Justin and I are really happy to be involved in it. I think there's an animated movie that doesn't
Yep.
thank us. Yeah, it does. I don't think they even
Oh, yeah.
thanked us in
No,
that
they gave
animated
him
movie.
more to Tom because it was set more in his stuff.
Right. As I always
Yeah.
use Tom did a great job, but I use the argument there would be no comic book unless
Right.
we had the game.
Oh,
So
I was about to bring that up. I was about to say, and you guys also worked on DC versus Mortal Kombat. How was that project?
that was good. We were brought in to kind of, I think at one point, the DC people and the Mortal Kombat people were not figuring out how to make it all work. So they hired
Hmm.
Justin and I to go to Chicago to bring the story together, and we wound up writing a lot of it and putting stuff together. And it was a lot
Mm.
of fun. I mean, it's a fight. It's a fight game with
Yep.
story in between. Like most of these games are. The games are, it's hard for anyone to take credit for a game because there's so many hands
Hmm.
on these games. There's so many people. There's so many levels of involvement. I don't do that many games anymore. I not video games, board
Right.
games, sure, but not video games. There's just it's just so much involved work, and they take years to do.
Hmm.
And then they come out and they're not really great for like, hey, you did that. Like we're talking
Right.
about it, but hardly anybody ever talks about
Mm.
my involvement with Injustice or any of the games because
Right.
it's about the game.
Right,
well,
but
also people think these things magically appear.
oh, jeez, yeah. But I will say this though. It does feel like you and Justin really kept Superman more balanced and everything with what he was doing. Where I was, to be honest, with Injustice 2, which I'm pretty sure you guys were not involved with,
No, we were not.
it made him. It felt so night and day because I don't know if you've seen much about the second game, but yeah, in that one, Superman, it became so clear instead of being like with you guys, like he went off the rails, but he was still Superman. There was
Right.
like he was never a good guy in the second game. It was made clear he just was doing because he felt he needed to, but he just wanted an excuse to turn evil. That's what the second game made it feel like, and it felt like, what happened here?
Yeah, the first game was such a huge success that they decided they didn't need to hire us again. I have no
No,
idea. I don't understand
yeah,
how these game people think. If something works, my first thing is to get the team back together again and
yeah,
do a second one. But I think what happens is, you work with people and then they think they can do it, and
right.
that's whatever. I mean, it's just a video game. So
Oh yeah,
I loved working on the first one. I love working on all these different games. But
right.
at the end of the day, it's less about story and more about setup to make the gameplay.
Yep. Well, um,
I'm
you're a
looking
very
at I'm looking at some of the people posting,
yep.
and
Yeah, you
I'm
got two
laughing.
ladies who are loving your accent.
I'm like, what accent? What are you talking about?
It's the
That's all. It's all Brooklyn. It's 45 years in Brooklyn. You can't get rid of it, no matter what.
exactly. I did love that during the Harley Quinn Zero. You're like, you're ready to go pound them a little. Like, let's do it. Oh, Darwin's artwork on that was so incredible.
Yeah, Darwin was great. I mean, it's funny because there was a time when I was like trying to lose my accent a little bit. I was like, you know what? I sound like every goofy, Brooklyn guy in a movie or something. And, or I go walk into Goodfellas or whatever. And I was like, okay, maybe I can tone this down somehow. And I had one person say to me, they're like, don't do it. That's you. It's like,
Exactly.
it's if you want to be like everyone else, you're in the wrong business. And yeah, the accent comes out, especially when I'm drinking a little bit, or somebody pisses me off. Then then I
Oh
get
boy,
it.
I bet.
I'm not a tough guy. I'm not, a person that runs around and postures, but but some people tell me, they're like, you could be a little scary, and I'm just always like, I am not. I don't feel I'm scary at all, but just watch what you say around me. That's all.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, and Jimmy, I just
I'm
want to
kidding.
thank you again for coming on. And again, it's just been a great honor. There's so much of your work we could talk about. Your heroes for hire, so much, but we'd be here all day if we did that. So
Yeah, I think it's better for people to go out and pick up some and
yeah,
check it out. I got to be honest. It's like I forget a lot of the stuff I've done. I can't turn the computer, but I have a wall. I have a whole bookshelf of things that I've said. Oh, what does that say? Hello to me and my little friend. That's, by the way, that's that's a Cuban.
that is
Right?
Cuban.
That's a Cuban in Florida. So it's an Italian guy playing a Cuban. So dropping all
Yeah.
the H's and say hello to my little friend. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. My Brooklyn's a little different than that. Although
Right.
I will say, Scarface, what a fun movie that is.
Yeah. Yep, but again, no, yeah, people could go find your work. Just they can do a Google search and find it all. They can get those
Yeah.
Harley Quinn omnibuses, all of
And
those.
I hope some of the people, some of your followers, check out the Kickstarter.
Hmm.
Again, the digital's only $6.
Right.
So if you want to get the whole book digitally, it's $6, and you get the stretch goals.
Hmm.
But if you want the actual book, it's only $20, and
Yep.
we give a good product, and unlike a lot of people's Kickstarters, I've done 19.
Wow. Yeah.
And I've never delivered a late book or a non-delivered book. I mean, everybody who's ever backed my Kickstarters have got their books, and
Yep.
so if there was a 5-star, if there was a rating on Kickstarter, which I wish there was, mine would be 5 stars. Some
Oh,
other
well
people,
deserved.
some other people might be 1 star or no star, but I take care of my stuff. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I always have people. Can you yell at this person for me? And I'm like,
Oh,
that's not my job. My job is to
yeah.
take care of my guys.
Mm-hmm. So, yep, everyone, I'll put a link down after we're all done here. I'll be putting that down in the description. You all could check it out. Back any other Kickstarter he does. Get Red Sonia, all of that stuff. Again, Jimmy, thank you so much. And tell Amanda, I know I've said this when I met you guys at C2E2 a while back, but adore her work. I adore your work.
Well, we hope to see you at C2E2 again this year.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
if I can make it. I already had Motor City Comic Con, blew a lot of money on that for guys like Scott Snyder and Jim Starlin and Dan Jurgen. So I'll just try and scrounge up what money I can for that.
How was Jim Starlin? That's pretty cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I saw him once before a year or so ago, but yeah, this time it was like everyone was there for him. It was so awesome.
I'm a huge Captain Marvel and Warlock fan, so
Mm-hmm.
every time I see Jim, and he's a peer, right? He's like I still fanboy out around him. So.
Oh, same here. With any one of you guys, I will always fanboy. Even if I ever make it into the industry, I will always fanboy.
Yeah, I'm that way too. I get on people's lines and they look at me weird and they go, "What are you doing online?" I said, "Well, I want to get this book signed, or I want to buy a print." And they're like, "What's wrong with you?" And I'm like,
You want to
"Respect,
do it right. You want to do it right.
respect goes a long way." Yeah.
Yep. So again, thank you so much, and thank everyone here. Like I said, check out his work, and that's I'm pretty much all. I'm trying to find a good way to sign it off. But I guess all I can say
That's all right,
is,
Robert. Thank you so much, and
yep.
thanks for everybody that stopped by, especially Nerdette, who's giving me pats on the back. Thank you so much. Yeah, and hopefully I'll see you soon, and we'll have some other things to talk about.
Yep, I would appreciate that. Take care.
Robert. All right.
See ya.